we started to say, you're putting critical race theory into the curriculum, they said, oh, that's ridiculous. So if you really feel led that God is calling you to send your 6-year-old into an environment where they're going to learn about trans ideology because they're supposed to be salt and light, I would ask for ID.
Humans don't flourish when we give our smallest, most vulnerable humans to the state. Government school environments are demonstrably, objectively, legislatively godless.
You can delegate authority for educating your child. You cannot delegate responsibility for the results.
All right, we're back to your Strongman Nation podcast, episode 2 with the world famous one of one, Nick Freitas. How you doing, buddy?
Infamous John Lovell's hero, Nick Freitas.
Yeah. Oh, it's Freitas.
Yeah, but
like a freight train.
Yeah,
Freitas the freight train.
I respond. My drill sergeant taught me to respond to anything close. I've been called far worse than Freitas. I'll tell you that.
Dude, you know what? I'm really glad. I'm just glad you're here instead of John Lovell.
Oh, God. So is everyone. Your entire audience is glad.
Yeah, just a huge sigh of relief. The best thing about Nick Freitas is that he's not John Lovell.
I actually have that on my business card. That's
John told me that during the whole little pillow fight, kind of semi-super gay thing you guys were doing there, which I'm glad I heard it went from pillow fight to gunfight, which is much more not gay. Super cool. Yeah. Although the brick you put in the pillowcase was a step
It wasn't as cool as when he puts like a belt of 5.56 in there. I was like, oh, okay.
But he told me like literally people online thought you guys were serious.
Oh, no, it was. We had people rushing to my defense, rushing to his defense, and we're texting back and forth. Well, the craziest part is when we had trash talked too close to the sun. Josh, that's what happened. And so we're sitting there at Homesteaders, and he's like, dude, we cannot do a pillow fight. Like, I know, but we've got to do something, right? Like, So we decided that a shoot-off would not get us excommunicated from the special operations
the thing about
community.
a pillow fight is you could win and still kind of lose.
Oh, no, you definitely lose.
It's like beating up a girl. It's like, did you really win? Because nobody's giving you points for that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want John to get kicked out of his sorority if he lost the pillow fight and, the whole deal.
My favorite part, you do sauerkraut well, we've talked about, you kind of kick into that, that voice you do with your eyebrow raised. And you're like, hey, John, I typically don't do girl sports, but I'll do it for you today. Maybe we could braid our hair afterwards.
Oh, yeah. Warrior Pillow Society. We'll go and do it.
Oh, it was amazing. Super good. Well, hey,
John is quick. Well, and he showed up when he showed up to Homestead. I don't know if you've seen the reels yet. He showed up to Homestead. I didn't realize he's talking to me. I'm in the background, and he's drinking a coffee mug with my face on it and a line through it.
Yes, I saw that.
Right?
Yes.
It was the anti-good looking club that John created.
But the thing about John is he can't turn it off.
We both have that problem. We will get to talking. So when he got up to speak, right? So I spoke first, and then he was going to have me come up to. We were going to do kind of like a Q&A portion together, and he didn't tell me this. He gets on stage, and the guy reads off his bio, and he goes, "Oh, I didn't have a bio for Nick Freitas, but John Lovell said he wrote this one for me right before." And so John Lovell had written the bio, and it was Nick Freitas is the president of the John Lovell fan club, and went through. And it was good. It was impressive. The
problem is he thinks he's funny. And so when we laugh at him, we encourage him.
We do. It's our fault.
I think we're to blame mostly. So no, if you think John is just obnoxiously funny when the camera's rolling, he's just like that all the time.
All the time.
Mostly obnoxious.
Yeah.
So, we love you, John. And,
I don't.
He's gonna be here at my house in a couple days, and we'll let him sleep inside. We won't make him sleep outside. So for those watching, we're just joking. This is fun. Hey, I'm here with Nick Freitas. Dude, Freitas is a great name to like. Did you get called like the freight train when you played football in high school?
Fritos. No, we had a graduate. I went to a high school with a graduating class of 27. I had to fight for a wrestling team. That was what we could afford.
Shoot.
We can't afford pads. We can afford the 4 inches of material that is a singlet. Right?
Yeah. Very strategically placed on the sculpted body of Nick Freitas. If you missed our last pod, we talked about politics, Christian nationalism, your military service, how you met your beautiful wife, a little bit about your story about Jesus. It was an awesome conversation. Got a lot of great feedback from it. Wanted to dip into this conversation on all things schooling and parenting. You've been known to talk a lot about how to raise boys, how to raise girls, and then the importance of schooling. You're actually, did you say you sit on the something for the schooling,
I am on
the whatever?
So we have homeschooled all three of our children. They've all graduated. They can all read, write. They love Jesus, and they don't like Karl Marx. So success.
Okay. But I also, me, probably super socially awkward, which I'm sure they are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're very socially awkward. They know what gender they are, and they look you in the eye, and they, make eye contact when speaking with you. So socially
they don't
awkward,
fit in at all.
Don't fit
totally.
at all. No, I sit on the education committee for the Virginia House of Delegates, and when we were in charge, I was the subcommittee chairman for the Committee on Higher Education. So I've not only seen education from the process of, going through it with my own children and raising them and coming up with curriculums and all of those things, but I've also seen it from a legislative side as sitting on those committees.
Okay, there's lots of ways we could attack this. Let's talk about you. I was homeschooled. You homeschooled your kids. I've homeschooled my kids for a large portion of that. I've started a Christian school. You have interest in Christian schools and higher education. We're both deeply vested in the importance of education and children. Carl, it was Joseph Stalin that said, education is a weapon of great value. It how do you say it? It determines who holds it and who they're aiming it at. Mm-hmm. So tyrants, historical tyrants, have understood the importance of education and owning the future by educating the children. Somehow, a large portion of our Christian community and pastors have missed it, and we've turned that work over to the state to the detriment of, I believe, the mission of the church and our nation as a whole. So let's get into the conversation on schooling, because I'll hear Christians, conservative Christians, who love, admire, and listen to all the podcasts, and they'll listen to Eric Metaxas and Jordan Peterson and Dennis Prager and Charlie Kirk, and all of these men that they respect and honor and listen to, and all of those men universally say the same thing. The most important thing you could do to save our nation is to pull your kids out of government schools. And so while they admire these men, few, if any, actually do what the men say when it comes to education of their children. So when it comes to education as a whole, obviously you care about as a parent. Talk to us, first of all, legislatively, what you've seen as a politician that terrifies you about government schools.
Well, first of all, they are directly using it for indoctrination of your child. If you think that because you had a good experience in your public school 20 years ago, that's what your kid is experiencing, that is not accurate.
That's key. Yeah. So speak to that.
It's
because
not
a lot of parents are like, well, it was great when I was there.
Yeah. When you were there, you were growing up in a nation that looked very, very differently. When you were going there was nobody thinking that you could just call yourself a girl or a cat for that matter. And then that automatically made it so. And then therefore the school had to make accommodations, in order to accommodate it. Right. That did not happen. Like, you probably had, decent levels of discipline. Your school was probably somewhat patriotic. There was a general Christian culture within the community. And even though it wasn't reflected in your curriculum, it was at the very least not openly disparaged. Okay. All of those things now happen in public schools. Yes. You're not going to tell me they don't.
That's right.
And what you're probably going to tell me is, oh, well, no, I know what happens in public schools, Nick, but not in mine. I'm in a great district. Oh, okay. So you've read all the textbooks and you've met all the teachers, and you are just supremely confident that all of them are at least not going to openly criticize and mock your values, your faith to your child. Like, you're supremely confident that because you've done the appropriate research to determine that that's so, right? At least so before you hand over your child. Correct?
Child.
Correct?
Your child.
Right? And the answer is no, you haven't. You are assuming that is the case because that was your experience. And the greatest heuristic that we use in order to make judgments about things is our own personal experience. The problem is you need to understand that your experience probably has an expiration date with respect to what's going on. A lot has changed.
That's right.
The other thing you need to understand is that the higher education system is overtly dedicated to staffing your public schools with teachers that they got a hold of first. There is a reason why. There's a reason why that the key to success, economic, financial success within the public school system is not tied to some sort of great metrics with respect to how well your kids read, write, do math, understand civics. It's not tied to that. It's tied to how well the teachers do continuing education. So if you think that college universities are generally left-wing in their thinking, which is an objectively true statement based off of any sort of metric that we can use, I want you to do that, and then I want you to times it by 10 when you go into the education department of those schools. That's where all of a sudden you get guys like Paulo Freire, who taught critical pedagogy and have essentially infused critical theory, which is a kind of a quasi combination of Marx with elements of postmodernism and existentialism, combined with this idea of power structures. They have infused that into the education degrees at most of your major universities. So even if a teacher goes in there with, hey, I just want to teach kids how to read and write, fine. But they had to go get at least a 4-year degree, and more than likely, eventually over time, a 6-year degree. And if they really want to go senior, more than that, in order to get into the classroom. And what they were told was, this is the way to see the world. They were not told, here's the critical theorist concepts or theories or ideas with respect to education. They were told, no, this is the way you should see the world. It's all based off of power structures. The disparities that we see in society are a result of those traditional oppressive power structures, which are generally rooted in everything from Christianity, masculinity, patriarchy, capitalism, even to go so far as to criticize the laws of logic, linear thinking, and the scientific method itself.
That's right.
That takes place. Now, some people will go through that and say, yeah, this is crazy and this is stupid, and I don't believe that. Other people go through it and say, this is the most wonderful thing ever. I can't wait to put 47 different types of trans flags in my kindergarten class. And other people will just say, I'm just going along to get along. I want to teach kids how to read. And if this is what they tell me, who am I to challenge it? Because after all, they're the experts. Okay. Now I want you to imagine 3 decades of that. Because at the same time, the reason why your schools have changed so much is because there's been 3 decades of there's been a concerted effort within a lot of your higher educational institutions to train the next generation of teachers to believe these things about reality and to infuse it within your education. In Virginia, I watched as they went through, and I spoke out and I opposed it, but we didn't have the votes. So I watched as they made it a condition to either get your teacher's credential in Virginia or renew it.
That's right.
To go through all of this additional training. And when we started to say, you're putting critical race theory into the curriculum, they said, oh, that's ridiculous. It's not in the curriculum. What are you talking about? It's correct that they didn't hand your child a critical race theory curriculum or a critical theory curriculum.
Yeah.
No, what they did was they made all of your teachers go through additional training, which was taught by everything from the Southern Poverty Law Center to books recommended by Ibram X. Kendi that taught your teachers. They didn't tell your teachers, go in and teach your kids critical race theory. What they said was, when you teach math, you need to understand these power dynamics. And so when you teach math, you need to do so through the lens of these theories and ideas. And so you're right, that is never going to show up in a syllabus that goes home to you, but it was going into your kid's classroom. And I will say it till I'm blue in the face. And quite frankly, and listen, I say this, I really do say this genuinely with love, because I know that people are confused. They feel inadequate to teach their children. They feel like this is why they pay taxes. They rely on 2 incomes. I get it all. You can delegate authority for educating your child. You cannot delegate responsibility for the results.
Let's go.
That rests with you. Right. So what I am doing, and you can get mad at me all day long, what I am doing is I am telling you this is going on in your public schools, no matter how rural, no matter how conservative, this is happening.
That's right.
What you choose to do with that information, is up to you. I can't require you to do it, but you can't claim you didn't know.
That's right. That's right. Nick, it's so good. I've been saying for years now, they're not teaching critical race theory in our government schools. They're assuming it as the central worldview and teaching everything from it.
Great way to put it.
Which is exactly what you just said. Yeah. I'm very
it's not every teacher, but it doesn't have to be. Like, that's the point.
That's right.
It doesn't have to be every teacher.
That's right. We could go some ways here. Would you encourage a Christian to stay in the government school system as a teacher?
Oh, as a teacher?
Yes.
I think so. I'll put it this way. Let me break down.
We know that there are people listening who are Christians,
my son-in-law,
and they're teachers.
my son-in-law is a high school counselor, right? And he struggles with this, right? Because he wants to help kids, and there's a lot of kids in this space that need it. Here's what I would tell everybody. Obviously, you need to do what you feel God is calling you to do. You as an adult or as a mature Christian, if you feel like God is really calling you to be into this environment so that you can push back against some of the insanity that is happening, because let's face it, 94% of kids, or not 85, it's more like, I think it's like 85 to 90% of kids are going to go through a public school at some point in their life. So I completely understand if you feel that's a calling for you. I am a lot more skeptical when people say that is a calling for my child, that they're going to go into this environment and be salt and light.
Yes.
I'm not saying that it can't happen. I would never presume to speak for God on all of these things. I would be highly skeptical of the reasoning that is being applied. And so if you really feel led that God is calling you to send your 6-year-old into an environment where they're going to learn about trans ideology because they're supposed to be salt and light, I would ask for ID if you're saying that God is the one that told you to do that.
Well, that's an answer that we get a lot. Well, I want my kids to be salt and light. What would you say to a parent who is using that as a reason to send their kids into what we would consider to be very hostile environments? And the reason is we want them to be missionaries. What would your response be to that?
Okay, there's some other great places they can be missionaries. How about the eastern portion of the Democratic Republic of Congo, where M23 is butchering Christians? There's a need for missionaries in that environment. Would you send your children? Oh no, you wouldn't? Why not? Because they're not adequately prepared, because they don't possess the intellectual or physical characteristics necessary to be able to evangelize in that particular environment? You mean you wouldn't just dump off your 6-year-old and say, well, God's got it. He called the Great Commission. You wouldn't do that? Oh, wow. Okay. Well, so here's my question to a parent. And I've done this before, and it's been a little bit embarrassing for them. And I that was not my intent, but I had to get the point across. It's like, okay, I'm going to tell you that if you don't feel fully comfortable in going into an intellectual educational environment and getting in a debate with a teacher that's been through probably 6 years of education within this theory, talking about critical race theory, critical queer theory, gender theory, all these various things, which will be infused sometimes subtly and sometimes overtly into your child's lessons plan. If you don't feel capable of being able to effectively respond to that in an environment where your peers are either going to side with the authority figure that you've given, which is the teacher, right? So there's social consequences along with educational, intellectual consequences or academic consequences. If you don't feel comfortable going into that environment, what makes you think your 7-year-old is?
That's right.
Or your 13-year-old?
That's right.
And let's assume for a moment that you do have the best environment possible, and you do have good teachers, and you're actively involved, and maybe you come in and you work in the classroom and you don't let your kids have a smartphone. Is that true of every other student in the school?
Yeah.
So what I would push back on is the experience I had with a person that told me that. I said, okay, I'm going to take on the role of a teacher, and I'm going to start spouting some things, and I want you to be able to defend it. Yeah. And you as an adult that's not worried about the social and academic pressures from that teacher or from your peers.
Right. Fully developed brain.
They felt stupid. It's like, okay, please don't tell me that if you're not capable of doing this, your 13-year-old is.
That's right.
Because the stakes are higher for them.
Oh, bro, it's interesting to think about what some parents are, the environments they're putting their kids in that they wouldn't stay in themselves. And as you talked, my heart fell is I think there are a lot of, and I'm saying this with tenderness and compassion, but I do think there are a lot of Christian parents, specifically dads. Let's talk to the dads who've spent more time researching the next gun they're going to buy or the next car they're going to purchase than they have the institutions of education they're sending their children to. And we can't figure out why we're losing our children. It was Vodi Bakum who said, don't be shocked if you send your kids to Caesar and they come back Romans.
Yeah.
It's the very natural process of sending your kids into environments. And we don't appreciate enough, I don't think, the fact that environments shape kids just as much as lesson plans.
Yes.
Our children are environmentally shaped.
The other thing parents, I think, need to really understand here, because there's two things that have taken place. One is, and one of them is a direct manipulation of parents. And once you see it for what it is, all of a sudden you can't unsee it. But the first thing that I would say is it's this idea that when you send your kid off to a school for their education, what you are doing as a responsible parent is you're telling your child, this is your teacher. They are an expert.
They are the authority.
An authority.
Yes.
So what happens when the person, the adult that you've told them is an authority contradicts you? Because now you've taken yourself out of the role as educator, you've put this other person into it. And when there's a contradiction and you say, no, listen to me now. Well, why? You send me to them to be, you provide a house, you provide food, you provide clothing, we go to Disneyland once a year. But that's the person you told me I'm supposed to listen to for my education.
That's right.
That's the first thing that you need to understand. There's a dynamic, there's an authority dynamic you've now created in your child's mind where they have to choose between the teacher or you when it comes to these things.
That's right.
The second thing that I think a lot of parents have been manipulated into believing is this idea that if you educate your child at home, you are responsible for the results. But if you let the experts do it at the school system, well, now, whether they get it right or they get it wrong, it's not your fault. You did what you were supposed to do. You sent them to the experts. Yeah. And what I'm here to tell you is, no, you're responsible either way. The difference is who you're actually delegating authority to teach your children. The responsibility is yours, period.
That's exactly right. And I think a lot of parents are afraid of educating their kids that we don't know how or it won't work. Well, then don't become a parent. God has given you the responsibility and he will equip you for that sacred calling. And guess what? You'll be better for it. You're going to grow because of it. You're not getting better as a follower of Jesus by advocating your responsibilities and giving them to someone else. Well, let me say something, see if you agree with this. And this is what I've taught at our church, and is that, so this is kind of appearing spheres of social sovereignty, you know, the family, the church, and the state. And the family was given the role, the charge and responsibility by God as a sphere of human authority for the well-being of the family, the safety, raising, and education of the children. The church was given the responsibility to preach the gospel and administer the sacraments faithfully. The government was given the limited responsibility of protecting her citizens, which means a strong border, punishing evil, which means having a moral framework to even define evil, rewarding those who do good. And that's it. When we take our children and give them to the state, whether or not the state allows 10 commandments to be posted outside, and whether or not the state allows there to be prayer in school, it's still a problem because it's a jurisdictional violation. Mm-hmm. And so my contention has been, even if we hail back to the days 40 years ago where public schools were great, my mission isn't to take our public schools back 40 years. Yeah. My mission is to take our children back from the state, because it's fundamentally a jurisdictional violation of God's intentions and plans for how humans flourish. And humans don't flourish when we give our smallest, most vulnerable humans to the state, no matter how nice the state may seem. Agree or disagree?
Totally agree. I put it this way. I started homeschooling out of necessity. I was getting out of the military and we didn't know where we were living next, and it was school year, so we had to educate. Yeah. Then we kept doing it because we were disappointed with what was going on in the public school system. And then finally we were doing it because we loved it. But it goes back to this whole idea of what you're saying. It's proper jurisdiction. Yeah. Government-run schools are a mass production approach to education. So even under the best conditions possible, it's still mass production. Yes. Now, that doesn't mean as a parent, I am solely responsible for educating my child. No, of course I can find other authority figures or people that have different experiences or education to then bring into that sphere, but I maintain responsibility and ultimate authority over it. So did I bring someone else in to help teach my kids math? Yes, because once we got past really, really basic algebra, I'm gone, man. Like I got nothing for you. So what happened? Well, I found somebody and we found curriculum that we trusted that could come in and faithfully teach it. And those resources have never been more readily available. But I remember I had to take a questionnaire when I was running for office once. And the question was, would you support bringing prayer back into public schools? And I said, I think the more fundamental question is, why are we letting the government run the schools?
That's exactly right.
And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, you think we're going to fix it all by some sort of generic prayer at the beginning of class?
Yeah,
okay, great.
That's right.
So the blue-haired, they, them teacher is going to lead all the kids in a prayer. To whom, I wonder, right? Like this is not how you solve this. You solve this by recognizing once again that there's proper jurisdictions and there's certain things that it is not good for the government to do because it is not well suited.
That's right.
Right. So
that's right.
Yeah. If you want to, anyway, I think what you said is spot on.
Think about the insanity of nobody would raise their hand and think who thinks the government does everything efficiently, flawlessly, effectively? Like who thinks, and like no one raises their hand. Mm-hmm. And then who thinks we should give our kids to the government to educate them? And everyone raises their hand. Mm-hmm. It's like no one thinks the government does anything well, by and large, as a rule, in terms of anything outside of its lane. And then let's go give them our kids. It blows my mind.
Well, and they've also done a good job of personalizing it. They no longer talk about education; they talk about teachers. So that when you critique an educational system or a product of the educational system, it's why are you attacking teachers? I like to look at somebody that uses that argument and be like, what educational institution taught you to think that way about that question?
Bro. It's a psyop of teachers unions. Mm-hmm. And here's the reality. 1 in 5 hires are teachers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's administrators and counselors and psychologists and this whole thing. So the percentage of hires is getting very small in teachers and getting very heavy on the admin side, which is typical of any government program. But secondly, it's teachers are like human shields. Mm-hmm. That the teachers unions use to put out in front, so we'll draw back our fire, and then they can advance their agenda. And they're just using teachers as body armor to promote their own agenda. So you're a legislator, you're a politician, you're on say it again if people are tuning in.
The Education Committee in the Virginia House of Delegates.
That's a big title. That's incredible. Speak to the lie that parents, I think, believe or assume that parents have a say in the government schools and that all government schools, you're laughing, okay, and that all government schools are local, right? Because we have school boards and we elected the school board members and we know the school board members. And so we're ensuring they're going to keep everything good there. Talk to how that is a figment of parents' imagination is no longer a reality.
So in Virginia,
or is it?
No, it's a figment of our imaginations. In Virginia, we actually have strong constitutional protections for local control of education. Here's the problem with that, though. All right, so you get elected to the school board, which means you're meeting once a month. You go on a couple conferences, maybe you visit with your legislators a couple times a year, and then you have an attorney, and you have an attorney that works for the school board and works for the superintendent. The primary job of the school board is you're going to select the superintendent and you handle other policies. And here's what's going to happen. The school board association, which will be made up of the largest, most urban districts, and that's the ones that'll have the most power within the organization, it will inevitably be a left-wing entity. They'll tell you they're nonpartisan, which is technically true, and yet all of the legislation they support will almost always be carried by left-wing politicians. They will provide you the funding for additional legal counsel. And they'll provide you legal counsel in case you get in trouble. That way, it's not coming out of your localized budget, or you don't feel like you're going to be personally in trouble or whatever else it might be. And every time you, as a member of your school board in your local conservative school district, want to push back against some sort of policy, because after all, you have local control, your attorney is going to step forward and say, oh, but if you do that, it's going to cause a lawsuit. It's just easier to comply with what the state has said, or easier to comply with the new federal, rules that have come down from the administration. And then that's what you're going to do, or at least that's what they're going to convince a majority of members of the board to do. Because if you don't start complying, well, then gosh, what happens if you lose your legal representation? And you don't want to be the person that loses your seat on the school board because you had to spend all this money in lawsuits fighting against all of these policies, right? And after all, the people are going to show up to the school board meeting and call you a bigot because you didn't think boys should be able to go into the girls' locker room or vice versa. That's what's going to happen. And I know what's going to happen because I represent a district that voted for Trump by about 64%.
Wow.
And we see that within our school boards. I mean, thankfully, we've had some really, really brave school board members that have been willing to push back. But guess what? They're not the majority, and they're not the majority in Culpeper.
Wow.
So what I'm telling you is, even if you get them, let's say you do. Let's say no, you live in the most conservative district possible, and every single member of your school board is a dyed-in-the-wool, hardcore conservative, doesn't want any of this nonsense going on in the public school system. Okay. Do they write the books? Do they write the curriculum for your school?
That's right. That's right.
Are they the ones teaching the curriculum? In Idaho has arguably the most conservative state legislature in the country. They passed all of the laws at the state level saying you are not allowed to teach critical theory. You're not allowed to do all this other nonsense. You're going to focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. And somebody went in with an undercover camera talking to various superintendents or principals. And they said, oh, we just don't call it that anymore.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Here's what I'm here to tell you, right? There are people that believe, and John Dewey, one of the fathers of the public education system in America, or at least one of the prominent theories on public education in America, they're pretty open about this is a mission to correct their children's thinking about the world. What are they correcting it from? From what you taught them.
From you. So
you need to understand something. When you send your little 12-year-old there because it's a mission field, they think it's a mission field too. The difference is they're the ones that control the environment, not your kid.
Bro, they got the money, they got the power, and they have your kid's attention because you've given it to them.
Yeah.
And I you said something earlier that just gripped me. Government schools are demonstrably, and this is objective. This isn't arguable. Government school environments are demonstrably, objectively, legislatively godless.
Yes.
You have a godless institution being led by largely godless leaders that is teaching a godless curriculum filled with largely godless peers. And then parents are shocked when their kids come back godless. Mm-hmm. So speak to, again, I want to win men, not just arguments, but I want to win both. One of the realizations with Charlie's life was, kind of the win men to arguments is kind of dumb because it's important to win arguments.
Yeah.
Right.
They Charlie was
they do work together. And Charlie, I think, was such a great balance of like, no, hold on. He would say, no, hold on. And he would attack the argument while loving the person in order to win both. Right. You win the men by winning the argument. And there are frankly many Christian parents who struggle with this idea of education and where should I send my kids? If there isn't a Christian school that I would trust, I don't think I can homeschool them, so I'll send them to the public school. I'm sure it'll be okay. Where parents get this innate trust of government and experts, I have no idea. It's this weird phenomenon where
it's a combination of their own personal experience and social pressure.
Yeah, I just watched a video where it's like it's this lobby. Mm-hmm. And everyone in the lobby is an actor except for this one gal. And every time a bell dings, they all stand up.
Yeah.
And so she's sitting there and she's like looking around, and this is kind of weird. After about the 6th or 7th time the bell rings, she stands up. She doesn't know why she's standing up.
Yeah.
Everyone else is doing it. And then one by one, they leave.
Yeah.
And then new people come into the lobby who don't know there's a test going on. The bell rings and she stands up.
Yeah.
After about 5 times, the guy goes, "Why are you doing that?" And she's like, "I don't know." And she literally says, "Everyone else was doing it."
Yeah.
And then the next time the bell rings, he stands up. And so, bro, the control group is out of the room, mm-hmm. and the whole room of strangers are standing up when the bell rings. It's social contagion.
Well, and this is the part that people need to understand, right? Because people will look at that and, oh, see, look at how easy people are as sheep. No, that's a heuristic. A heuristic is an
no, what do you mean by that?
A heuristic is an intellectual shortcut that we use because we don't have complete information about the world. So for instance, if I wanted to pick a university, right? I don't study every single university in the world. I use heuristics to narrow down my field and then focus my attention there. If I'm sitting in an environment where everybody stands up when the bell rings, my logical conclusion is there is a reason for this. Because I don't know what the reason is, it makes more sense to go along with what everyone is doing than to stand up against it. And that's not because I'm being a sheep. That's actually a logical conclusion. But what happens when the conditions are set by somebody that doesn't have your best interest in mind, or perhaps even worse, thinks they have your best interest in mind?
That's right.
But is setting those conditions. The heuristics you're using, God gave you those for a reason, because you don't have infinite knowledge of the universe. But all of a sudden, if I put you into an environment with bad conditions, you're going to start to respond instinctively to them.
Dude, that's incredibly powerful. In a way, dude, that is wild to think about, how that's impacting the decision of Christians. So if you had the ear of a Christian parent, we got a lot of young families that are in the Strong Man Nation movement and following the family capital of the world. What would you tell them? And this isn't like, argue, it's more of an appeal, or they're looking to you as like, Nick, I see Nick Freitas' life. I love his message. I love his beautiful wife, his kids. And this is honestly one of the things I tell young people. You should go find someone you admire that has the kind of fruit you would like, and then you should ask them how they got there. Because the parenting was designed by God, I believe, to instill in us humility. Because there are wild stakes on the line, and we've never done it before, and we get one shot at it. That should instill a deep sense of humility. What do you think you should do in response to that? I should take my responsibility seriously. I should understand clearly what the parameters of my responsibility is, namely raise this child in the fear and admonition of the Lord, which can be translated, saturate them in a God-centered environment so that their intuitions are God-centered and the kingdom is normalized, which can't happen in a godless environment, by the way. But once I know what I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to do it, I should go find someone who's done it well and ask them how they got there, because I've never done this before. And it's amazing to me, the amount of people I've looked at with a marriage I want and kids I want, bro, almost none of them followed the typical traditional path of throwing your kid into the government school and walking away. All of them found alternative ways to obey Jesus, because they realized I literally can't obey Jesus. Raising your child in the fear and admonition of the Lord, as translated in the book of Ephesians that Paul talks about, literally means to saturate them in a God-centered environment. And I can't equate that with giving my children over to the state schools for 16,000 hours of indoctrination during the most primal, vulnerable developmental years of their life. That is an incongruity I cannot bring together. So if you were talking to, as long setup, if you were talking to a parent of small children asking you, Nick, how did you do it? What should I do? All the caveats, you got to hear God and obey him, blah, blah, blah. What would you encourage them to think about and do?
The very first thing. So everything that you just said is accurate. It makes sense. It's logically consistent. And yet people aren't doing it.
Yes.
Now, I want to go back to your example before of the young woman in the studio. Bing, everyone stands up. Okay.
Yes.
When you're thinking about making this decision of should I have homeschool, what about socialization? Bing. What sort of teaching degree do you have? Bing. Are you qualified to do this? Bing. Can you afford to do this? Bing. I want you to hear that little bell going off every time you are confronted with just an honest question about whether or not you possess the capability to be able to effectively educate your children. All of those things should send off a trigger in your head that, why are they trying to keep me from doing this?
Dude.
Why? Like, that's the first thing I want you to do. Stop looking at all of those questions as being nothing more than simple questions and start viewing it for what it is, a heuristic that has been created in order to prevent you from ever truly considering this.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Once you see it like that, you can't unsee it. You can't unhear it. And then it's like, well, wait, do I want the socialization they're doing? What do you mean teaching credentials? I taught my kid how to walk. I taught my kid how to tie their shoes. I taught my kid how to dress themselves. I taught my kid how to talk. I read to my kid before they ever went to your school. What do you mean? Do I possess the ability to teach them the basic things that they need to be able to survive? What do you mean I need this credential? Where did you get your credential? Oh, from a university that is teaching you that a boy can become a girl simply because they really feel that way that day? Is that the sort of credential? Then all of a sudden you get that reverse skepticism, and now you start asking the right questions. Okay, how would I do this? Because here's what I'm going to tell you. Like I said in the beginning, we started out of necessity. We kept doing it because we were concerned about what was going on in the school system, but we kept doing it because we absolutely loved it. There have never been more people willing to help you do this well for free.
That's right.
Right. There's never been more resources. There's never been more people that want you to be successful. So stop talking to the people that don't want you to be successful, either because they work in that system and are advocates for it, or you wanting to do it makes them feel guilty that they're not.
Bro, nail on the head. And I would throw in an additional reason. Sometimes I don't think we shouldn't blame all this on the government schools, because Christian parents keep sending their kids there. Mm-hmm. I've said this very many times. If all of the pulled the kids out of the school system tomorrow, it'd collapse overnight.
Yes.
And then what would happen is something better would get rebuilt.
Yes.
And that would serve all of the kids better.
Yeah, it's not, education is not going to go away, right?
No, I mean, the damning word on Christians is that we're propping up the system that's ruining a generation. Mm-hmm. We're not changing it. We're not making it better. We're not redeeming it. I'm not hoping to redeem government schools. It's unredeemable. Mm-hmm. And it's the wrong jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. And so the damning reality of Christians propping up the institution that's ruining a generation is one of those things that I believe brings the judgment of God on the church, which is why I think the church needs to move more aggressively into the education space. Mm-hmm. It's the household's job to educate the children. It's the church's job, I believe, to strengthen the saints so it can be a community project. So let me get into this. I know you're big on homeschooling. I was homeschooled. We homeschooled our kids. I've also started a Christian school now. Mm-hmm. So I want to get your thoughts on the Christian schooling as overseen by churches. Are you for it? Are you against it? Is it homeschool and homeschool alone? Or is there room in your understanding for a Christian school?
No, I think there's, I think when you, I think there can be a broad swath of ideas. I like a marketplace for ideas when it comes to education, because one of the things that you learn when you homeschool 3 kids is the same people that came from the same 2 people learn very different. They have different objectives for school. And so that requires different intellectual and educational inputs. The biggest thing that we need to get over is this idea that education is a building you go to. No, education is the transference of knowledge and wisdom from one generation to the next for a variety of practical, moral, religious, social, and civic purposes. And that can be achieved in a number of different ways. And there are some people that really do benefit, enjoy, and learn the best from what we would call a schooling environment, which is I go here, I sit down, I do this. There are other people that learn very, very different. Some people read and learn better. Some people have to audio visual. Some people have to tactile. They have to actually move and work and do. Great. Then let's have a marketplace of ideas that actually addresses all of those various learning mechanisms instead of forcing them into a one-size-fits-all. Yeah. Whether you can have a bad homeschool environment. You can have bad private school environment.
That's right.
The idea is
toxic.
The idea is to look at education for what it is supposed to be, right? Scripturally, it tells us we are to raise our children in the way that they should go. Okay, great. What are the different objectives they have for the life, right? Well, okay, we know they need to evangelize, right? We know they need to live for God. We also know that in Scripture where it says that a man that doesn't take care of his family is worse than an infidel, so we know they need to be professionally sound. Great, so what are the various things that we do in order to achieve those things? And it's going to look different for each child. There will be similarities, right? There are certain processes. I don't claim that there's 1,000 different ways to teach someone to read. I think that there are, very, better models than others. But I think, I am perfectly fine with there being a plethora of educational approaches. It's more about who are you trusting with the education and what is their intention behind it? What is their goal? What is their motivation?
That's right.
Because if their motivation is different than yours, I don't care how good they are at it. All they're going to do is do a really good job of screwing it up.
That's right.
Right? That's so when you have diametrically opposed outcomes or desired end states, then the really, really, quote, good institution just does a really good job of doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. I mean, if the average parent went to the average government school and asked every employee and every administrator what their end game goal was for each student in their specific field, it would not line up with the Christian's end game for their child, then
Well,
why are you sending them there?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and the other thing too that I want people to understand is I don't want to make light of, because I understand when you have grown up in an environment where you've constantly had this thrown at you, there's anxiety and there's fear associated with it. The thing that I would remind the Christian though is God says we haven't been given a spirit of fear, and God says be anxious for nothing. So if you do have that spirit of fear or anxiety about pulling your children out, where is it coming from? Because it isn't coming from God. And so the question that you need to ask yourself next is, all I would ask anybody to do that is viewing this and maybe feels offense or feels like I'm making light of the fact that you need two incomes to survive. I'm not. I got married and my wife and I were 19 and 20. I remember making, $15,000 a year roughly. Like there was no way if we had a kid right there that we wouldn't both have had to work in order to make sure that we could just pay rent. I understand. This is the part where I also look at our churches and being like, here's an idea, churches. Here's an idea. And this is something you guys are doing. But here's for all the other churches. Instead of, maybe this year, instead of crashing the shoe market of Uganda by sending over a bunch of stuff 1 or 2 times a year to help kids in Uganda, which is not a bad idea, but that's probably not the best mechanism. Maybe you look at your own congregation, and if you have parents in there that are frustrated and concerned about their child's education and are looking for alternative, maybe we actually allocate some resources toward that purpose. Like they did in the New Testament churches. Dude,
my man. So maybe people don't know this. We started a Christian school 2 years ago. And I want to ask you the politics of this. Christian schools aren't illegal in the state of Washington yet.
Yeah.
They're just economically impossible and non-viable by design.
Yes.
So that the government has a monopoly on the education of our children, full stop. 1.5 million kids in the educational system in my state. Over 50% of my state's budget goes to state-funded education. We're one of, I think, 2 states that has a constitutional requirement where education for children is deemed as a constitutional right in the state of Washington.
That's the legal too.
So we must be the 2 states then.
I think there's more than that. It depends how they word it. In ours, it's a free and compulsory education is guaranteed by the state constitution.
Okay. So that's the legal mechanism, I understand, to then fund it, or the mandate for the legislative body to fund it.
Yeah.
Well, so this is what I'm actually working with the White House a little bit, and because the White House is discovering rampant discrimination against the church and Christians across the country, and it's not just in the places you'd think; it's in the planning departments, it's in the bureaucracies of the building codes. So in my valley, you can there are 8 or 9 different zoning overlays within dozens of distinctions underneath the overlays, and there's only one distinction and one overlay where you're allowed permission to apply for a conditional use permit to build a Christian school. You can build a public school in almost any place.
Yeah.
And so right out of the gate, I'm going to have to go spend millions of dollars as a church or individual to speculate on property that may or not be allowed to be used for Christian schooling if I don't get the zoning change and I don't get the hearing examiner to go my direction and the planning department on board and the commissioners and the city council and the neighbors. So everything's stacked against me. In Arizona, you can build a church or Christian school anywhere without a permit because they're the top of the food chain.
Yep.
And so there's planning department discrimination where it's like, I can't even start. So we started Garden City Academy, Nick. We're the farmers, Garden City. You're a good biblical theologian. That's going to resonate with you in the book of Genesis and the book of Revelation. We started in a garden. The story ends in a city, and it's going to be this beautiful story, Garden City Academy. We started a Christian school, all 12 grades full of kids, the first Christian school in the history of my state to start full grades full.
Wow.
Now, you got to ask yourself, is that because there's never been a Christian who wanted to start a school in my state? Yeah. Or because it's so hard that it takes a really stubborn redneck to pull it off? And so my question is, I want to work to get school choice in my state for school, a voucher program that would start introducing free market dynamics into the education conversation. I'm arguing not just for my ability to educate my children as I want. I'm arguing for Maria Sanchez, who's a single mom with 4 kids working 2 jobs. I don't want her forced into an educational path she doesn't want to take because that's the only affordable option. Is it possible for a state like me to get to school choice? And if so, what's the road to get there? The impossible question.
Well, no, I know the road to get there. I just don't think you're going to be able to in Washington.
Okay.
We can't do it in Virginia, and we have better conditions than you do. Now, this is not to say that God can't do something miraculous, but understand when you're asking for something miraculous, and then ask for it specifically. Because if you want me to lay out a process whereby you convince not just a predominantly Democrat, but overwhelmingly liberal progressive Democratic Party and administration to help you take away the one thing they are absolutely relying upon for their future
voters,
their future power.
Yeah.
Their answer is no. I mean, think about that for a second. If you were living in Idaho, where you had really, really good homeschool laws and stuff like that, and the left asked, well, what's the way that we actually take away all of those good homeschool laws?
Right.
Idaho would be looking at him like, I don't care what argument you come up with, we don't care.
Yeah,
We're not letting it happen. Well, okay, flip it in reverse. That's where you find yourself in Washington. And so the answer is that you have to have a critical mass of people that are so hungry for this that people start losing elections. So my question is who and what Democrat in Washington is losing their election because they voted against school choice legislation? Because I'll tell you what they're going to say. They're going to say what you want to do is you want to use public money in order to fund religious indoctrination. Okay, great. Well, we just set up 3 madrasas in Seattle, and now your private tax dollars are using it. They'll have your people shutting it down.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you're going to have other elements coming in going, okay, fine. If you have government dollars going to Christian schools, well, now the government gets some say on what's taught within that Christian school.
That's right.
And
that's
so
right.
the problem with some of this is that it's a lot more, it sounds very straightforward until you start to learn all the ways that they will actually subvert it. And
the political mechanics.
Yeah, the political mechanics are just, again, the first way they're going to stop it is these bills are going to go to subcommittees where they'll be voted on. And again, it's not nefarious, it's just part of the process, but they're going to go to stacked subcommittees that'll kill it every single time. And then everybody within the educational infrastructure is going to come up to advocate it against it, except for probably homeschools and some religious organizations, but they don't have the same lobbying power or money. They're not investing in campaigns year round. And then let's say, and then you look at it from a practical standpoint, they're going to say, okay, great. If we manage to get it out of the House, will it pass the Senate? If we manage to get through the House and the Senate, is it actually going to get signed by a governor? Why don't we focus on something else that we can actually achieve, right? That's what you're going to hear from the people that actually support your legislation. Okay, we can do it, but it's never going to happen. So unless you've got a groundswell of support of people that really want to see this happen and they're willing to make it move in districts where currently it's not popular, there's just not going to be sufficient incentive for it. And part of what you have to do, again, now, if you want to fight a really long-term battle, the long-term battle is you get as many people out of the public school system as possible, and then you educate that that generation to look at this topic very, very differently. But the current composition of your legislature is not going to allow this to happen unless there's something there that I'm not aware of. They're not going to allow this to happen.
We have the Spirit of God.
Look, this is why my caveat is always,
it's a miracle.
Yeah, God doesn't. Yeah. Everything I just said is absolutely true, unless God doesn't want it to be, right? Like unless God says, yeah, but I've decided it's happening, and so it happens. But I can only strategize. I can only strategize based off of my 10 years in a state legislature in a state nowhere near as liberal as Washington.
What's so helpful? Sorry, keep going. Well, I was going to say what's so helpful for Christians to hear that it's very sobering, and it is hard not. We regularly fight discouragement. I personally regularly fight discouragement in Washington. I own a small business owner. I'm watching donors move out of state. I'm watching young families move out of state. They can't survive. I'm watching business owners. And so it's like what Christians in red states don't understand is we have to get involved politically because there is no future for the church or the family in a blue state unless there just isn't. The families can't survive. Churches can't survive. The churches gets weaker and anemic. The government gets bigger and stronger. And it's just a war of attrition that we're never going to win. So it's hard to fight discouragement. And I think what's important from what you just said, Nick, that all of us need to hear in Washington, the perspective you're giving us as a legislator in a similarly challenging state, but less so than ours, is stop and think about why.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they want to give you the opportunity to choose where your kid goes to be educated? Like, and then let that fuel your rage.
Well, can I give you the happy version of this? Can I give you I just gave you the depressing version. That's the practical politics of it. Let me give you the happy version of it. Here's how you subvert that entire process. You stop expecting that you're going to achieve some sort of monumental gains within a 2, 4, 6 year period.
Yes.
And instead what you do is you focus on using the laws which currently exist on the book in Washington State, which are actually not horrible for homeschooling.
Yes.
And you start providing resources, not to provide some big Christian school that's going to cost you a bunch of money to set up. No. You got homeschool co-ops.
Yeah.
And those homeschool co-ops happen to meet in churches, because why wouldn't they meet in churches?
Yeah.
And the church actually provides, some of the resources that would, otherwise not be available. And so now all of a sudden, you don't focus on every child in Washington having access to this legal apparatus whereby they can find private education. You just are focusing on all of your congregations and everybody in your congregation that wants to do this. And now all of a sudden, you've taken tens of thousands of students outside of a public education system, which is teaching them to essentially worship the public education system.
Yeah.
And now when that voter shows up and they see a commercial, or they see a politician saying, oh, well, we can't do this because this is going to happen. I'll be like, no, that doesn't happen. I know what you're talking about.
Doesn't make sense.
So the thing is you could win this in one generation.
Yes.
The problem is that people want to focus on a political apparatus. I'm not saying you guys want. They want to focus exclusively on a political apparatus and what they're doing is, how do I change the conditions with all of the current conditions?
That's right.
Or
you go outside of the conditions.
Or you can look outside of the conditions. If you just focus on what you can control right now within the legal framework that you have, you will create the voters within 10 years that will vote for the things that you're asking for.
Well, you can't win the game playing by their rules.
No.
And so what I hear you saying is like, and this is what we did during COVID. It's like, our default position as Christians, as conservatives, as people, as lovers of the rule of law, is to obey authority. Mm-hmm. Right? We're not the ones who aren't burning businesses down and rioting in the streets and lighting things on fire. But when you realize that to obey the governing jurisdictions is to violate your conscience before God, it creates this crisis of conscience. You got to figure out what you're going to do. And what we found out was, if we keep playing by their rules, we're going to lose our souls, because the rules aren't designed for your flourishing. They're designed for your oppression. They're designed to secure your unquestioned allegiance and obedience. Mm-hmm. And so we stopped playing by COVID rules. We stopped working from assuming all of their premises that they gave us from the quote unquote medical experts were true. Mm-hmm. And if you stepped outside the premise and stepped outside the rules, all of a sudden you could go outside again, and you could live like a human again, and you could gather with your friends at Thanksgiving again. I mean, people don't realize it was a misdemeanor for months and months and months in my state to leave our home during COVID. It's wild. And so helping more Christians think outside the box, activating more churches, activating more pastors, activating more men to lead their families against the tide, for the sake of being faithful to God, is one thing that you're doing so well.
Well, can I just say one other thing on that, and I'll leave it with this. But obviously, we're commanded to be respectful of governing authorities, and we are commanded to follow the law insofar as it does not command us or require us to do things which are direct violations of our faith or what we owe to God. Right? We're to render to Caesar that which is Caesar, and render to God that which is God's. Yeah, but there are times where there are things that you can do that may need to be challenged in court.
Yes.
And there may be time, and the thing is, they're going to come after you.
Yeah.
And as Christians, we almost have this idea that, well, if they're coming after me, did I do something wrong? I got to follow this rule. If they've set up the rules where the only way where you can't possibly win, well, then you have to start to look for alternatives. Now, that doesn't mean you need to violate the law, and you're never required to violate God's law or morality. But like I said before, you can't set up a Christian school. Can I set up homeschool co-ops? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do those homeschool co-ops function a whole lot like a school? Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to take you to court. Okay, great. Take me to court. Let's settle this. And then let's draw attention to the fact that I was providing education for a single mom that desperately needed it in a way that actually serves her needs. And you decided to punish me for it. Yeah, let's put that all over X. Let's put that all over Facebook. Let's put that all over Instagram. Let's do it. Christians, get over this idea that you're not supposed to suffer for Christ. The opposite is true. You are.
That's right.
And so every time you have to endure any sort of discomfort for Christ, what you should be saying is, God, thank you so much that I was seen fit to suffer something for your name.
Yep. My man. I'll give you the final word. You're talking to some parents, and they're looking at a Christian school option. Now, we've been able to start the Christian school, but it's economically very challenging because all of us are having to fund the state school, and then with whatever's left over, fund this Christian school. And I'll just say, let me say this to see if you agree with this. I was homeschooled my whole life by my parents, my mom, incredible, my dad, and they started before it was legal. It was illegal in the state of Washington to homeschool kids at one point. And so my little subversive mom and dad were right on the cusp of this libertarian patriotic movement, And as you can see, I struggled socially for a long time, and so it backfired on them. My brother turned out better, but my mom and dad were right on the front end of that movement. Greg Harris, the homeschooling movement. I don't know if you remember Greg Harris or not, the homeschooling movement there. But you still have to get permission from the state to homeschool your kids in Washington.
Yeah.
Which just chafes at me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just fundamentally, I'm like, I don't need permission from the state to obey Jesus in raising my kids. So that kind of bugs me, but whatever, play by the rules as much as you can, like you've said. But one of the things that we found, and this is the strength of a co-op, is when we're talking about homeschools, I think we should both acknowledge here, there are weird homeschool people.
Oh, yeah.
And there are weird homeschool kids.
Yeah.
And I would even go so far as to say there are some who shouldn't homeschool. Now that might be controversial.
No, that's true.
But I'm like, yeah, you know what? I think you should, find some friends to help you with that,
Yeah. There are some people that are just weirdos, and they'd be weirdos no matter where their kids were educated.
That's not a homeschooling's fault. That's weird fault. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, like John, for instance. John's just going to be weird anywhere.
Thankfully, the kids have Rebecca, right?
Thank God they have Becca. Otherwise, I'd be worried. But one of the things at Christian school we found the benefit of is as my kids got over, especially my sons, it was not going to be good for my son to be home all day with his mom. Mm-hmm. I wanted my son in a masculine environment around other men. And so we put together a co-op of guys. And second of all, my wife didn't have expertise in every subject matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade. Well, we can get there. You start hitting, 4 or 5 kids across 5 grades in 12 different subjects. It became a little overwhelming, understandably so, for my wife. And so in the co-op and then eventually the Christian school, what we found was we could create an environment and a culture of people who held and shared our similar values that had subject matter expertise that could teach our kids maybe in some ways better than I could in relationship to algebra and physics and some of these things.
Definitely.
And then I think I can still fulfill my mandate as a dad because I'm shaping that environment. I'm speaking into it, and I'm giving delegated authority to people I know personally and trust, share my values to help me fulfill my mandate to educate my children in this context. Agree or disagree?
Oh, no, absolutely. That's the way it should be. Homeschool, gosh, it's homeschool, not isolation school. Right? The home just means, and I sometimes even struggle with the term homeschool because I think it, but I'm not surrendering the term.
Right.
But we've talked about with our program, we want to start working at curriculum. And it was like, oh, you want to do a homeschool curriculum? Like, actually, I want to do a family curriculum because
there you go.
I don't want to stop learning. right? Like
That's
I don't
right.
want to start. I think part of the problem right now is we hand our parents a curriculum for their kids.
That's right.
And then so far as we hand a curriculum for them, it's just how to do this for their kids. When in reality, what this should be about is we're learning things together.
There you go. That's right. That's right.
And everything is an educational opportunity. So if Dad, if you got to go work on a project, or Mom, if you got to go work on a project, including your kids in that project is part of their education, right?
Yes.
Like this is, and doing
Take
this
your kids with you.
Yeah, and doing this with other people just makes sense. The difference now is the other people, not
That's
you
right.
met them at a parent-teacher conference once. No,
That's
know
right.
the other people. You know
That's
they're
right.
good at the things that you want them to do. You know,
That's
my
right.
son and I went to a homeschool fair once, and he's like, "Can we do blacksmithing?" I'm like, "That looks awesome. We can absolutely do blacksmithing."
Yeah. We just need to find someone who knows how to do it.
And we found someone, and he was awesome, and it was a blast.
Totally.
And we ended up getting our own forge. And it's like, guys, please understand something.
Yes.
Two things I'm going to tell you, parents right now, two things I'm going to tell you. One, yeah, there's going to be frustrating moments, but it's so cool to be able to just adapt on the fly and to incorporate really neat things and experiences. And all of a sudden see your kids learning through everything they do instead of thinking that learning is this thing that I do in this building from this period to this period.
That's right.
Right. And enjoying learning. The second thing, you ready for this, parents?
Buckle
Easiest time of my kid's life was their teenage years.
That's right.
Nobody
That's exactly
says
right.
that. Nobody
That's
says
exactly
that.
right.
I don't have a single person I know in the public school system that says the teenage years were the easiest. The teenage years were the easiest.
That's so good. That's so good.
Easiest.
Bro, we had 4 teens until a year ago, and now LMA is 20. Yeah. My 18-year-old son's married, and then 15 and 13-year-old. And bro, we're having an absolute blast.
I love hanging out with my kids.
An absolute blast. My kids are amazing. They're fun. They're intelligent because of the education their mom and I gave them, and then our friends. I mean, I could Heather Carlson, Curry Apple, Daniel Apple, all these dear people who I learned from.
Yeah.
I mean, the school was basically me gathering all the people I admired and learned from and asking them to help me do that with my kids.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and so now we're learning together. I think one of the goals of education is to teach kids to love to learn.
Yep.
And to know how to learn, because you're sure is not going to teach them everything they need to know in 12 years.
No, not even
But if
close.
they love to learn and they know how to learn, they're off and running. I'll tell you, the teenage years, they have been so much fun. And at Family Capital of the World, we exist to slay the lie violently that the teenage years are the drama years. Mm-mm. No, the 2s aren't terrible. The 3s aren't horrible. You live according to God's design. Discipline, yes. Challenging, of course. Exhausting always, but worth it. And then you get to teen years and you're just picking beautiful fruit off the tree. It is so much fun. And I rarely hear people share that. Mm-hmm. My parents taught me that when I was young. We've taught that to our children, and you do the hard work early, and then it's just sweet fruit harvesting. So, bro, I feel like we should have met sooner.
Yeah. God's timing. God's timing.
I'm like, gosh, I just love what you're doing. We were going to talk about parenting too, but we didn't get to that. We'll do that another time. But Nick, I love you. I'm very grateful for your, you are a formidable force for the kingdom of God in the public square, and you have integrity there and power there because you're a godly man at home. You got a wife who loves to spank you in the kitchen, and you got kids who rise up and call you blessed. So I'm proud to know you, my friend, and I'm very grateful for your incredible wit, your very sharp mind. I learned from you. I should tell you this just as a way of saying thanks. When you kind of riff off like this kind of witty but also apologetic type response in the political realm to a moral issue, you're equipping me to how to think. It's like, that's right. And sometimes sarcasm is a very effective tool in the most serious way. It's an effective tool to uncover the silliness and the stupidity of the demonic lies out there. So, dude, thanks for being a warrior for Jesus and doing it while you're laughing. You know, I mean, like Christians should be happy, right? Yeah. If we're Christians and angry all the time, something's missing. Yeah. And so we want to make war with joy in our hearts. You do that better than most I know. And man, it's a real honor to have made your acquaintance. Thanks for speaking into the Strong a Man Nation and encouraging me, my family. I showed some. I pulled up my phone last night to my kids and I go, "Hey guys," and I showed the one about the antidepressant thing. My kids laugh because they know where they came from, and they know their mom and dad love each other. Yeah. I show them that, and they're laughing, and all my kids are like, "Oh, I love that guy, Dad." I said, "I'm gonna have him on the pod tomorrow." They're like, "Oh, you're kidding me! How did you get him?" As if I'm nobody. Yeah. How did you ever? I said, "Well, I offered to pay him a lot." No, I'm kidding. So they were excited to have you a part of the family here, and it's just been an honor to get to know you. Thanks for giving us a couple hours of your time. We know you're a busy guy, and look forward to continue. I think we're going to link arms and do some damage for the kingdom together. We're going to hoodlums for Jesus.
That sounds great. Well, again, thank you for everything you're doing. It's an honor to be on.
Yep, love you, Nick. God bless you, and we'll talk again soon.
All right.
Hey everyone, Pastor Josh here. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate the podcast, review, follow, and share. And if you want to support Stronger Men Nation, you can go to strongermennation.com/give to help keep unwoke, uncensored, straight talk Bible teaching coming to you for free.